What's happening, roadies? This is Chris Salim.
This is Lauren Crowley.
This is Lid Shaw, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right. What's happening, roadies? Man, it has been a while. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Roadie Free Radio. This is your host, Larry Milburn, and I am coming at you from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. Yes, I am. This is episode 156, and today we are going to bring to you, to replay for you, our fantastic podcasting panel, the Power of Podcasting panel that I did with my co-hosts and friends at the NAMM show back on January 17th from Ballroom A at the Hilton, my friends. What is going on? It has been a couple of weeks. It has, since our last episode with Jimmy Pettinato. Oh, that was a good one too. It's been great. Listen, California was fantastic. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. How are you? How's it going? Are you new to the show? We got some new listeners out there. What are you guys doing? Who do you work for? What band are you out with? What artist do you work for? Are you a monitor engineer, a lighting designer, a production manager? I don't care. I just want to thank you for being here and thank you for joining the conversation. Maybe, just maybe, you're someone thinking about launching a podcast in 2020. Well, let me tell you something. This episode is definitely for you. And I will tell you all right up front that we did not have a chance during the short hour that we had to do the panel to really touch on everything that we wanted to. The hour goes super quick, as you can imagine, and it certainly did in this case, but we did it. We had a great time. So there might be a part two. Look out there. Keep your eyes on the NAMM, summer NAMM schedule. Maybe there'll be a part two, and maybe we'll even bring it on back next January to Anaheim. First up, a couple of happy birthday messages. JD Dworkow, happy birthday, my man. Aaron Mikulski, Michael Brom, Michael Musburger, and Harvey Citron all celebrating some birthdays right around this time. So from Roadie Free Radio to you, happy birthday. Wow. Kobe Bryant and his daughter. That's, I don't even know where to go with that, right? That's just bad. It's just in the fucking bad column. So hearts and thoughts from all of us here to the extended NBA family and to the Bryant family and to all those fans out there. Also, I'd like to give a big shout out to my friend. I can call her my friend now. I believe I've earned that right. She might correct me if I'm wrong. Carrie Kais, the long time 28 years, 25 years, something like that. Long time monitor engineer for Pearl Jam. Also the co-founder of soundgirls.org. You know, I'm a big supporter of my sound ladies out there. And Carrie Kais picked up the Parnelli Audio Innovator Award for 2020. I believe 2020, 2019. She just got the award at the NAMM show, basically, for her outstanding work in the field and for her longtime work with the juggernaut that is Pearl Jam. It's funny. I shot a quick piece with Carrie right before I went into a live sound mentoring panel with some fabulous women in the field. And Carrie and I did a little bit about Pearl Jam and the upcoming record and the upcoming tour and all this and that and what else is going on. And then I just turned the camera off and we started talking about something else, and someone else popped up and started talking to us and said, "Oh, congrats on the award." She didn't even bring it up. She's super humble and, but she's stealth, but she's deadly, that Carrie. So anyway, Carrie Kais, many blessings to you and congratulations on picking up the Audio Innovator Award from Parnelli. Good stuff. Whilst I was in LA, I got to see many cool people, grab a lot of good interviews, and let me just give you the short list of who is coming up in short order here. Over the next few weeks, you are going to hear an interview with Larry Martin, the owner of Tour Supply. We dig deep into Larry's past and his relationship with Prince and his studio and designing that studio and putting it all together. We also sit down with Jeff Cardoni, film and television composer Jeff Cardoni, who has just wrapped up Silicon Valley and is currently working on the Kaminsky Method. Jeff's an old buddy of mine from back in the late 90s, something like that. And scored the music for my short film Roadie. You guys all know the short film Roadie, how this whole damn thing started. And anyway, Jeff's on the show. We had a great chat. Very interesting stuff. A lot of cool stuff about Jeff I didn't know that came out. And as well, we've got Tana Douglas, the first female roadie, one of the first documented female roadies. Let's just put it this way, kids. She, at like 16 years old, 17 maybe, was doing front of house for AC/DC way back in the day, man, like 74, something like that. So we dug deep also. She's got a new book coming out about her experiences, and I can't wait to release these episodes. Really good stuff. And then I've got a bunch more good stuff coming up. So stay tuned. If you have not subscribed to the show, go ahead and do so over at iTunes or Google Podcasts or iHeartRadio or SoundCloud or wherever it is that you consume a podcast. You can subscribe to us. Hell, you can go over to YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, put it on in the background while you're doing stuff. Just cruise around your studio, your office, or whatever you got going on, and listen to the show right there. It's good stuff. We're everywhere. We are everywhere you need to be. I'd like to give a special thank you and shout out to everybody in LA that was so accommodating, so welcoming, and so wonderful, particularly my panel co-hosts, Mr. Liz Shaw, Fela Davis, Chris Graham, Maddie Boudreau. We really, really had a great time. And I got to tell you, right before they opened the doors, we were all outside kind of getting ready to go in, and there was a line out the door down the hallway to come into this panel, and we were like 90% full in this thing, and it just made me really happy. Obviously, selfishly because the thing was packed, but also because people are interested. People want to know what it takes to start a podcast. And these were the right folks to have up on the stage. I can tell you that. These are good people, man. These are really good people. I want to give a shout out to Ivan Diaz from Fretman's Podcast for also being a gracious host to me. I also want to thank some of our sponsors that showed up and supported us: PreSonus, Sound Devices, Roswell Pro Audio. I'm obviously talking into the Roswell Pro Audio Mini K87 microphone, which I love. I can't wait to try the Mini K47. That one's coming up next. Anyway, just everybody. Focusrite, Telefunken, everybody who's helped all of our shows. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for all of us. And we really look forward to the next chapters in each of our shows and the growth that's going to happen. So I also have to give two more quick little shout outs. No last names here, but Steve and Charlie, if you're listening, you know who you are. You know that trip and the way it panned out would not have been possible without you. Thank you guys very much. From the bottom of my heart, you made that trip what it was. I want to let you guys know that we are sponsored today by Mr. Chris Wilson, the audio wizard over at Show Pro Beard Co. He and his wife have started their very own unique formula of beard balm that not only performs well in terms of health and nourishment, but also provides the control, shine, and pleasant aroma that any bearded professional would appreciate. These are non-waxy, all-natural beard balms that will leave your beard soft, smooth, and nourished. Choose from a variety of natural smelling scents like Home Sweet Home, Morning Wood, Through the Woods, Chain Motor Oil, and of course, there is Original Unscented. If you use the code ROADIE, you get 20% off your entire order. That is 20% off your entire order when you use the code ROADIE over at showprobeardco.com. From the NAMM Show, 2020 in Anaheim, January 17th in Ballroom A at the Hilton. The power of podcasting. Hit it.
Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
Happy Friday morning. Welcome to the Power of Podcasting panel. How are you guys? How was day one? Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a good first day? You tired? No. My fucking feet hurt. That's the truth, but I'm ready. I'm good. Real quick, it wouldn't be very roadie-free radio of me if I didn't thank our techs in the back, Warren and Jimmy. Thank you guys for making everybody sound and look good up here as best you can, and I appreciate it. So it's no secret that podcasting in the last few years has, it's exploded, thanks to some really cool folks, and thanks to guys like Mark Marin and some other people in this space that have been doing it a long time, and we've just jumped on the coattails, I guess, or I've jumped on the coattails for sure, and particularly in the last couple of years, podcasting has really taken off in the public consciousness. So I hope, my goal for you today is that you walk out of here, if you're thinking about starting a podcast or you are already podcasting, that you walk out with some more knowledge, some more tools, and the gumption to take your thing to the next level. So real quick, as of now, how many of you out there are active podcast listeners? Oh, okay, well that's good, that's real good. How many of you out there launched a podcast in 2019? Yes. And how many of you out there are thinking about launching or are going to launch in 2020? Yes. Right? That's pretty awesome. Good. Well, good luck to you. Hit us with questions today. Don't be shy, because we're here to answer. We've been down the road. These guys have all certainly been down the road longer than I have, and I am humbled to be up here with these folks. I'm a fraud, a sham, a hustler when it comes to these guys. I fell into this kind of accidentally, just following a passion, but these folks actually do what they do. They're real audio people. I just fake it. Anyway, so I thought one of the things we would do first is get a look under the hood at some of your favorite podcasters here, and just talk about how we got started and why we got started and all that good stuff. So here we go. From Nashville, Tennessee, Mr. Liz Shaw from Recording Studio Rockstars.
Thanks very much.
Chris Graham from the Six Figure Home Studio. Fela Davis from the Art of Music Tech podcast. And bringing up that blue collar flavor, Mr. Matty Boudreau from Working Class Audio. So, guys, I want to go down the row here and find out from you why you started podcasting. That's the first question. Why you started podcasting, and at what point, if you remember, because you guys have been doing it for a while, what point you remember finally feeling like, I'm doing this. I'm a podcaster. This is what I do. Liz.
Well, so quickly, I was a fan of podcasts first, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts. And what struck me about it was that you could go learn about something that you really were interested in. And at the time, I really wanted to learn about how to run my studio business better. So I started listening to business podcasts, was a big fan of Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas. And then part of the message I got was that, hey, starting a podcast and starting and something sort of using the internet where you could share what you know and teach around the thing that you're really passionate about was like a legit thing to do. And so I thought about it. I was like, well, I love making records, so that's what I want to do. So I started the podcast, Recording Studio Rockstars, to share that, and that was my fourth show. I'd already started 3 and then finally figured out what I wanted to do on the 4th one. But as far as how long it took, I'd say it took months before I started to feel like this is really happening, and it was consistent enough. They say 20 episodes is a good mile marker as far as doing that. And also coming to an event and having somebody walk up and out of the blue and recognize me and say hello that was probably one of the things that really made me feel that way.
I just actually real quick, sorry, Chris. I just want to give a shout out for those of you that listen to podcasts. If you know the show Entrepreneurs on Fire, that he mentioned, John Lee Dumas, I would not be up here with him or with these guys. None of this for me would be happening if it weren't for John Lee Dumas. And I joined up for, what's it called,
Podcaster's Paradise.
Podcaster's Paradise, right? I went into this thing blindly and I just found that, joined that, and I hooked up with Liz through that. And this guy's been my mentor almost 4 years now since I started, all because of that. So shout out to you, man.
Thanks, dude.
You got it. Anyway, go ahead.
So I'm an audio mastering engineer, and at one point in time, I was running a lot of ads on YouTube. And one day, Lidge saw an ad and clicked on the link, and then reached out to me and asked me to be on his podcast. And at the time, I was doing a podcast with friends called the Guitar Knobs, and it was basically like just us being nerds about guitars. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was always like using the microphone all way out here and, no technique at all. And Lidge invited me to this mastermind group that was a bunch of content creators and podcasters. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come. I don't know why you invited me, though. I don't make content.
Because you're real good, dude.
Oh, thanks, man. But so I started hanging out with them, and it was awesome. So we would meet once a week. We still meet once a week. And at one point, we had the good fortune in our group of having a bona fide genius join us, Mr. Brian Hood. And Brian had a blog called the Six Figure Home Studio, and asked me if I wanted to do a podcast with him. And my wife hated that I did the Guitar Knobs podcast. She just thought it was such a waste of time. And I was like, no, it's fun, I promise. And then when Brian invited me, I was like, let's see, it's a business podcast for audio people. I could probably get at least 3 customers out of that someday. So I told my wife that, and she was like, yeah, go for it, it'll be great. And so we started podcasting, and we don't talk about audio gear, or at least we try not to. We don't always do a great job of that. I succumb to the temptation to talk about gear often. But anyways, we started recording episodes, and Brian's blog had been real popular. And so we launched 3 episodes. And this is kind of what I recommend everybody does, is try 3 episodes and tell people, hey, we're going to try this. If you like it, write a review. And if enough people write a review, we'll keep doing it. And we did that, and I think it was like 77 reviews right off the bat, 5-star reviews on iTunes. Wow. And we were just like, oh, cool, all right, let's keep doing it. And I don't think I've had the moment yet where I feel like I'm a podcaster. It's still like, face peeled back. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This can't be real. So yeah, I think that's pretty much my story.
Like the
I had
Maxell
that
tape.
yesterday walking around.
Commercial.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Fayli Davis. I started off with the Art of Music Tech podcast, but first that was a video podcast. I was featuring like musicians and producers that I had worked with. I'm also an audio engineer by trade. I'm a front of house audio engineer. I travel with jazz bassist Christian McBride, so I was kind of using my connections with that to get other people to come on this video show that me and my business partner created. We loved doing the show because it got us in rooms that we wouldn't necessarily be in unless we were interviewing and helping someone out in some way. That was cool, but it was only 5 minutes, and we realized we weren't getting the attention. We had a lot of great information on the cutting room floor because it's video. It has to be quick, it has to be entertaining, it has to be... And I was like, that's great and all, but I like the long form of podcasting because I had been listening to that for a while from working in shops and stuff. I had gotten into it instead of just listening to music all the time. One of my favorites was the Adam Carolla show. He would keep me entertained, and he would always say, create your own stuff, your content, whatever you're into, create for it. So it was kind of a combination of all of those things of just like, oh, okay, I want to go longer form. It's more content that can be cut up later and can be used. And so me and my business partner decided to make it the Art of Music Tech podcast, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now as a podcast. And it was, people started asking me, well, how did you do that? Or like, what gear do you need? What do you need to do it? And I was like, oh, I would give them recommendations. And then I ended up meeting my third business partner, which now I own a podcast studio in Fort Lee, New Jersey called One of One Production Studio. We're a 4-guest podcast studio, and it's in a business suite. And so our clients now come to us. If they want to rent, they can rent from us. They can do all things gear-wise, because that's what most people are scared about in the podcast realm is the gear. Like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, so we take care of that for them, and then they can take care of putting together great content. So that has become its own business model. I moved into, Fort Lee is one of the most expensive counties in the country. So it's a lot of people that do very well entrepreneurial. Yeah, it's entrepreneurs and doctors, lawyers, everything. So we have those people as clients now. I have a plastic surgeon as a client. I have an NFL wife podcast, political podcasts, like everything that's going through that studio now. So that's pretty much my story and how I got into it, and it kind of snowballed into this new thing as a studio. So, and as far as knowing that I'm a podcaster, yeah, that just took reps, like anything, and then I've been on two of your podcasts as well. So, so doing other people's podcasts.
Soon to be 3.
It's soon to be 3 with Liz, and we'll get together as well.
She just passed the audition.
But this is what it's about, is about spreading the word about what you do. That's what podcasting helps you do. As soon as I got into it, more people knew what I did for a change. I didn't have to go one-on-one all the time. It was that people knew from hearing my stories on these other podcasts and on my own podcast why I did it and why I did certain things. So, yeah.
I started about 5 years ago. I had a studio in San Francisco that I failed tremendously at and got into a lot of debt and caused a lot of strife within my family. And I got out of the studio, got off the lease, and got to the point where I thought, well, I need to find out how other people are doing this. How are they surviving? How are they covering their studio rent, their relationships with their family, and all while maintaining an audio career? And I hated writing, so I started with a couple blog posts, and I was like, you know what, that's not going to work for me. And then I thought, aha, I'll do a podcast. That's easy for me. I can talk, record, all things I know how to do. So I started up, and about 5 episodes in, I got not an anonymous call, but I got a random call from one of the folks, a guy named Chevy Shevlin, and he worked for Pensado's Place, and he just called me up to give me some encouragement and said, I know you don't know me, but I work for Pensado, and what you're doing is really cool, and you should keep going. There's a lot of opportunities, and that was a great bit of encouragement to make me realize, okay, I need to get serious about this. And that's kind of when I knew I had a podcast and I was a podcaster.
That's awesome. It's funny that that's the way you started, was sort of in a downturn of things. That was my experience. I had a bunch of video clients, and I came off this high, and I thought, my client roster is going to be full, and literally the bottom just fell out for like 4 months. And I'd already been thinking about a podcast, but I hadn't launched yet. I thought, well, I'll just start this thing just going to be in the background over here till work picks back up. And about 4 interviews in or something, I looked at my wife and was like, oh, we have a problem. This is going to be a problem. Because I knew I would like doing the interviews and getting the stories. I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. Again, the power of podcasting to do it anywhere, right? It's like anywhere, and you can put it out and you can get your voice out, and then it just kept going. And then you start getting that encouragement from people or feedback, and right? I mean, we talk about finding your voice and whatnot. And when you start feeling like a podcaster, I think it is when you either get a call from somebody or you get that little bit of encouragement, or you get that first email from someone who's listening, right? And you start those first 10 shows and it's like 10 listens on number 1, and then maybe you got to 20 on the next one, and then it starts growing and you're like, fucking people are listening to this? Oh, yeah. Right? This is amazing.
Yeah, you see the downloads start to grow and you're like,
yeah.
Huh, I know my mom just listened once. Who are all these people?
Right.
But I emailed her 100 times.
Right. Please, Mom, leave me a review. It helps in iTunes. Yeah. So on that, and when you start to feel like a podcaster, you mentioned like 20 episodes in, Liz. I felt the same thing. I want to talk about sort of finding your voice, picking your style. Did you guys play around with different formats, or did you find somebody right out of the gate? You're like, that's going to be my model. How did it work for you guys?
Well, let's see. So, like I said, this was my 4th podcast. So the first one I started was actually a totally different niche. It was called Bitcoins and Gravy. I got gotten introduced.
That didn't make it?
It did.
Wow.
Funny enough, it did make it. I had gotten introduced to this new thing called Bitcoin by somebody, and I was fascinated by it.
What's Bitcoin?
Yeah, man, let's not go there.
Don't ask.
I got 30 episodes or more for you to listen to. And we found a podcast. I said to him, we went to some meetup, and I said, hey, let's go see if there's a good podcast out about this to go learn more. And then we were listening to it, and he came back and said, oh, they're doing a contest where you can submit a pilot episode and see if you can win. And so we were like, let's do it. But unfortunately, we discovered it on Thursday afternoon, and the deadline was Friday night. So anybody with reasonable would have said, too bad we missed it. But fortunately, we weren't reasonable, and we went out. And like I took my iPhone and went to Walmart, and I just went up to strangers going like, hey, have you heard of Bitcoin? Will you be on my podcast? And he went to some coffee shops, and next thing you know, we had a show. I stole my band's music for the theme music. We invited a guest from the meetup, and we got a domain name and some artwork through Fiverr or through a connection he had. And by Friday night, we submitted it, and we ended up winning the award. And so we got the editor's choice. And so then we were invited onto a network. We did that for 8 months. It got a lot of accolades. We even got written up in the Wall Street Journal. And then the partnership completely dissolved. So it turned out that this wasn't, I kind of rushed into it. That's a whole nother topic, but deciding how you want to start something. I'm sure you'll have something to say about, making the right choice with that.
Yeah, well, I would say this. First of all, podcasting is the safest place to make content on the internet. Authenticity is important, and you can get on a podcast and just be like, I think, a mile is 400 feet. Could be wrong, somewhere about there. People don't care. They want you, they want your authenticity. So there's a couple formats that you can do. You can do a monologue podcast that's just you talking into a microphone. You can do a co-host podcast, which is what I do. Just find yourself a genius with a big audience and start recording stuff with him. Or you can do an interview-based podcast. These are kind of the 3 big things. But I think the most important thing that I would say is don't make up your podcast persona. Don't think about well, maybe if I sounded like this and talked into the microphone. No, that doesn't work.
You're going to sound like that anyway at the beginning.
Eventually.
Yeah.
But authenticity, I think, is the most important thing. And one of the things to keep in mind that makes podcasting so unique and so powerful is you have to ask yourself, why would anyone listen to this? And the thing that makes podcasting different from every form of media on earth is YouTube, Netflix, HBO, Fortnite, movie theaters, all of these forms of media are competing for 100% attention. They want you to sit down and just be like, oh, Fortnite, this is all I'm doing right now. Podcasting's different. we're not competing for undivided attention. We're competing for divided attention. So someone's doing the dishes or someone's working out, and there are so many more hours of people looking for content than there is content to fill it. If you want to make, like YouTube or Instagram TV or whatever that happens to be, you're competing with Fortnite. You're competing with Netflix, and that's tricky. But podcasting,
You're competing with dishes.
you're competing with dishes. Yeah, exactly. Good one. So I would say like be authentic, and just keep in mind like this is a multitask type of media, so the bar's a lot lower, and that's great.
But if you're going to get into it, I mean, you talk about the ease of it and the safety of getting into that. If you're going to do it, you have to be consistent about it.
Yeah.
You have to treat it like, if there's a television show you all watch, it would really be a drag if every other week they decided that, well, they just didn't feel like they were going to do it this week, so they're going to postpone it. So
You got to be a grown-up.
Yeah, you have to set a schedule and stick to it, and that's, I think, been helpful for me to just every Monday, without fail, for 5 years.
So
Always.
Let's talk about that, because in a call we had a couple of weeks ago, I was lamenting the fact that the show got away from me for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I was beating myself up about that until a point where I was just like, it's going to come out when it comes back out. So do you guys deal with that, or how did you get, because one of you guys was like, dude, it is what it is, and your audience will hang with you, and so when you get to that point where you're putting it out a lot, and then you can't.
I dealt with that on previous shows, but when I started this one, I knew, as Matt said, that the consistency is probably the number one thing that's going to help you succeed with it. In fact, the great news about that is it's the number one, probably easiest thing for you to actually control. In a way, it's like, if you can figure out how to just be disciplined about what you want to do and consistent with how you want to do it, then everything else can take second seat to that.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest reasons that consistency can be problematic is if you're thinking about podcasting as a performance. That's the opposite of authenticity. So I think if you're authentic and it's just like, I'm just going to press record and start talking about some stuff that I think is cool and I'm genuinely interested in it, it's a lot easier to be authentic than it is to welcome to the blah, 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 blah podcast. So, yeah.
When did you guys all start feeling like you were finding your voice? Like you said, in the beginning, naturally, you have that, radio guy or gal, right? And then that starts to go away. So when for you all did that start happening, where you felt like you could be yourself more?
Yeah, about 20 episodes in, like you were saying. We're not as consistent with my podcast because I'm doing so many other people's podcasts. It's hard for me to keep up with my own. But with me, I've been lately doing a lot of interviews and not just talking about gear so much, just the journey. And I try and get as many special people as I can with mine. So it's, it depends, because mine is, I'm like, my last interview was with Beyonce's lead backing vocalist. So it was like knowing her story, and we kind of went long. It was like maybe like a 90-minute one when we're usually like 45 minutes. So
she had a lot to Beyonce.
I mean, exactly.
That's my co-host right there. He's doing it.
Wow.
Chris Graham.
Exactly.
The dad joke line and divider is right here. We're the dad joke side.
I love it though. But yeah, the consistency you do have to have. I just like to do my podcast to keep my reps on speaking as well. So I at least try and do it at least once a month. But yeah, being consistent with other people's podcasts is just as hard as doing your own. So I mean, I know exactly what you're saying with that. I mean, when if you want to take it as a business like we have, on taking on other people's podcasts and being on top of them, like that's a whole nother situation as well. So that's how.
Well, for them, for clients, they're clients,
yeah.
right? So You can't miss a week.
Exactly.
Right,
You
it's
can't
coming
miss
out.
a week.
Right.
Exactly. We have to make this happen. So
Right.
staying on top of other people is kind of constrained me on my own thing, but but it's out there.
I think about 20 episodes in, I was having a conversation with a microphone manufacturer who I've been friends with for a long time, and I got on the phone and he goes, dude, your voice kind of has this kind of radio quality to it. What, have you been like doing a radio show or something? And I said, actually, funny you should say that. I do this podcast now. And that's when I knew that something was taking place, that you start to consciously shape your voice.
You must get those rips. That's why I still do my own podcast. Yeah, is the consistency of delivering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you sort of instinctually sort of calm down, right, on the mic. You're not like you're not
Yeah.
pushing it anymore, and you're just
Stop acting
talking.
out.
You stop acting out. Exactly.
And then you start talking on the phone like this.
You walk around the house with headphones on, right?
One of the weird things that I've found is, as a mastering engineer, I'm on phone calls a lot with clients, and a lot of them listen to the podcast, and sometimes I'll find myself talking not in my real voice on the phone, and I'll be like, oh shit, they know what I sound like. Like they've listened to me for 50 hours. I can't, I have to be the same person all the time. And I think that there is something valuable there. When you're finding your voice, there's an element of personal integration where you're just okay with all the parts of yourself and you're trying to be you on purpose all of the time.
The other thing I just want to jump in and say too, we talked about format, the different kinds of format and stuff like that. When you're thinking about launching and you've got an idea for a show and you don't know what it is and you're listening, it's like anything else. It's like watching other people's video content and you're like, oh man, I can't do that because they already do that and this and that. At some point you got to plant a flagpole and just go, and your show can morph over time. It's okay, and your audience will go with you, but it's to get it out there, you got to start somewhere. And I mean, if you go listen to a Mark Maron show and then you listen to my show, I rip that shit right off. And opening, I mean, I could tell you the format, and I also did it because I knew that's what worked for me. I knew I was going to be good doing interviews, and I knew I wanted a little time to like talk about whatever bullshit I talk about in the beginning. And then you drop your sponsor stuff in there and you're in and out and you're done. And so I knew that format worked for me. Consequently, though, I've done episodes where it's just me talking for 15 minutes about whatever, And the authenticity thing and the consistency thing is like, you hear those words over and over and over again from YouTubers, from podcasters, from creators. It could not be more true. And I did an episode this summer. This one blew me away. I did an episode this summer where I didn't have a guest. I didn't have a guest for like 3 weeks or something. And I had all this personal stuff going on. I thought, that's gonna be the episode. I'm gonna talk about surgery I had and a job thing that went bad, 15 minutes. And within minutes of releasing that show, I started getting phone calls and emails from people listening that I've never met most of these people. Now I come to something like this and I get to meet people in person, but they were reaching out. They're like, dude, are you okay? Blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And it's really cool. And that's another sort of step, I feel like, in the evolution as a podcaster when you really start engaging with your audience.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right? And they're engaging with you and you feel like, okay, that's the next level of the voice. And to go back, it's so weird that it is around 20, 25 episodes, because I remember being in the shower thinking, okay, well, the numbers are starting to go up, and well, now you better have something to say. Now you sort of come out being a podcaster and you're screaming like, listen to my show, leave me a review, blah, 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 blah. And then at some point you got to go, well, I better have something to say.
Well,
what am I saying?
I want to jump on something you said just now. You have to also come to a decision about how you're going to interact with your audience, if you're going to interact with your audience, right, and on what format that's going to be. And within, I'd say, the last, 4 months, I've made a conscious decision to just say, reach out to me on LinkedIn, I will accept your request, and I will communicate with you. And as a result, I've had just a ton of response and a ton of communication with people who listen to the show.
And
so
it's funny, like for me, interacting with people is actually one of my favorite things to do. I love to actually talk about music and making records with somebody face to face or in a classroom or in an environment like this. But the figuring out how to open up and start that communication has been something that was really challenging for me to do. I think my instinct is to just kind of like kind of stay in my world when I'm like, okay, just reach out. And then every time I send an email and just ask a question, or YouTube was one where when I started doing that, you start to see the comments and interaction, and it's like, wow, you're having conversations, and it works so well. And sometimes you make such a big deal out of it. You're like, oh, I gotta write the perfect email and send it to everybody. It's got to be the most incredible thing ever. And then something comes up and you're like, I better just knock this out tonight. And you send it out, and it's like super short, and you get a huge flood of response from it.
Yeah,
It's funny.
I just one quick thing, because we've all mentioned YouTube as another vehicle out there and another platform. Don't be fooled. If you have built an audience as a podcaster, it will not overnight translate to your YouTube audience, right? Or there's other audiences I found. I mean, like, that's a whole other community that you need to start working and building from the ground up and being consistent and being authentic and all that kind of stuff. You will get some crossover, but
Well, there's an interesting thing with YouTube is that, YouTube is not something most people have on in the background. And there is a little bit of a tricky thing where when someone's listening to a podcast, they know, well, there's not going to be like a slide, or there's not going to be anything I have to see to be tracking with the podcast. And combining YouTube and podcasting is tricky because YouTube, you can have some FOMO there of like, well, if I'm not giving them my full attention, am I going to miss anything? Podcasting is not like that. It's much more casual.
Right.
And so that's deeper than I think I understand. But yeah, there is kind of a different mediums. Instagram is going to have to work a certain way for it to be successful. YouTube's going to have to work a certain way. And podcasting is the same. And I would say with that, the podcasting is a little like dating. You have to be authentic when you're dating somebody, because if it goes well, if you've pretended to be somebody, you have to keep being that person to be with them. That's not fun. It doesn't go well, right? But if you're podcasting and you're being yourself, you're being authentic, interacting with people outside of the podcast, you don't have to like put on a show or continue to, I have to use my podcasting voice. So yeah, I mean, just authenticity is king.
as we knew this was going to happen, we talked like time is flying, but we could do this. We could do this all day. And I just want to mention a couple of things. We are going to go, I think, down the hall and around the corner over there after this thing. If you guys want to come and hang out and ask us questions and do all that kind of stay high and everything. And I'm going to leave some time for some questions in here, so get them ready. But let's jump ahead real quick to gear, because we've got this beautiful little display going right here. And so I just want to talk about gear a little bit. Obviously, I think most people, is anyone in here like not in the audio world or doesn't already inherently know how to use this stuff? Right back there? Cool. All right, awesome, good. So you come here, this is like Toys R Us for gear and everything, and it's very easy. I mean, you guys, all of you guys really already had these tools and toys around you.
Yeah.
And I did to a degree, because I have a music background, but as a filmmaker I had some things, so I kind of knew, how to start. But you do not get swayed by having to go out and buy a $500 to $600 microphone right off the bat to be a podcaster, right? There are several options. So you guys all have great ideas about gear, so I'm going to let you jump in and take it over.
Yeah, well, when I started, being a studio owner, obviously I had everything I needed to get going. And you go through different permutations of what works and what doesn't. And long story short, I kind of, as far as doing interviews, whether they're remote over the internet or connecting with people in person, I got sick and tired of working in a DAW. And so...
That's software, guys.
Yeah. So this little box up here, the Sound Devices Mix Pre 6. Sound Devices has been around for a long time, and I won't give you the big sales pitch, but long story short, I found that was bulletproof.
Same.
Doesn't crash, gets the interview done, and then I transfer it all into my DAW and go from there and put the show together with all the parts starting in that little box.
Which goes back to authenticity. The nice thing about using hardware to record is you don't have to worry if your software is still working. You just press record, this little guy says boop, and then you have nothing else to worry about except being yourself.
Because there's nothing more nerve-wracking than you being in the middle of an interview and looking up and going, oh crap. Or hearing the guest go, oh, hold on a second, Pro Tools did Pro Tools thing.
There's one thing that might be a little bit more nerve-wracking, which is when you finish it and then you go look for it and you realize you're missing a complete track of audio.
Right.
So you can do an internet one and have it go bad. That's happened to me. I've done it through using a DAW and I've had it go bad halfway. I've had it stop and then everything that was just recording isn't there anymore. I've had it interact with some cloud storage online and not work and lose stuff. So
Not to shine a light too big on your troubles, but like
please do. That's why I'm here.
No, but like there was a period of like 2 to 3 weeks where every other day I would get a message from Lidge. He would send me these voice messages. Dude, I just had an interview crash. I have to call the tech support at such and such company like every other day. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but raise your hand if
you?
you've heard me miss a week. Has my podcast been missing?
Well,
That's true.
let me pitch in with the MixPre kind of pitch here. So Matt told me about, well, let me back up here. Whatever you have to start podcasting is probably what you should start with, because the number one thing is authenticity. So to get a bunch of new stuff and to be like, is this working? You're going to have a shitty podcast if you do that. So start with something simple. If it goes well, Brian and I love these things. They don't pay us, but they did give us free ones. Shh. But the way this thing works, you plug it into your computer, and Brian and I chat with Zoom, what we could use FaceTime or Skype or whatever. And he comes in on one fader, and I'm in on another. I press record. He presses record. When we're done, I Dropbox him the files. That's it. But the whole reason we love this, A, it sounds good, and B, it's easy. That's the most important thing. So whatever you have that makes it easy and okay, I think the temptation here is to be like, if I don't have a good enough preamp, people won't like me. That's not why people like you. Right. It doesn't have anything to do with it. So I didn't buy any gear when we started. I had a mic laying around. It was nice, but not a podcasting mic, it's a condenser mic. Did 3 episodes, we got good response. So then I went out and bought a fancy mic. I personally love Electro Voice RE20s. It's like the big giant gray microphone.
And your voice sounds great on yours.
Well, thank you,
But
bitch.
it's more important. I think it's more important, as you said, just get started, get the thing under your belt, and get a few episodes down, and then start to figure out, what do I really need here?
Yeah, and remember the word consistency, that also applies to your rig, whatever it is. So one thing I would point out is I bet everybody in here has got something that they feel is their creative skill set, whether it's the microphone, whether it's the audio, whether it's the editing, whether it's a presence on camera, and just lean on that. Start from that, go with it, figure everything else out as you go. And it's that figuring out what system might work for you now, making that consistent, and then letting it evolve is where it's going to work.
Yeah,
there's no reason you should not let any of this hold you back, right? I mean, I literally was at a place and I saw this woman doing her podcast episode with one of these, just passing it back and forth.
It's a great sounding mic.
Now, I thought, that's not going to be great, but you can do it, right? Or you can plug things into this and make it work. So if that's what you have, go for it.
Yeah.
But what do you guys use at your studio for all these people?
We use Focusrite, DAW. But we have an engineer there looking, that's over it. And I mean, it's ran like a studio, more so. But when we do our mobile stuff, we'll use sound devices, but we also use Focusrite as well. Their new 3rd generation 2i2 is amazing, and it's fairly inexpensive, and I've never had it crash.
I started with that. That's what I use. It's awesome.
With DAW, I've never experienced that, thank goodness. And I use Logic as well. So we use that, on the go all the time, which I would do that. I mean, every NAMM we would do some on the go podcasting. We also use Lewitt microphones, which I suggest them because they're very inexpensive. You can get a large diaphragm for like $150, and that's what we use. I also use it on my grand piano when I'm mixing a big band. So instead of having like $1,400 worth of microphones, I'll have just 300, just a pair of those, and I also do my podcasting through it. And I'm also endorsed, but I endorse Wire World cables as well. For me, that just signal to source. I'm trying to have the best signal the whole route. So even microphone cable is a big thing for us to just keep down the noise level and get it, broadcast quality, at fairly low price. But I mean, the wires are a little expensive, but once you hear the difference, between.
But when you're starting, like you think of that because you're a live sound engineer, right? So when you're starting,
and as a business, I like to deliver that kind of quality. But exactly. As a person just starting a podcast, hey, get you a $150 mic and a $20 cable, and let's roll.
So you're using a Lewitt dynamic or condenser?
Condenser, large diaphragm.
That's
where
something
it starts.
that's worth talking about too. Is just some of those differences. So, for example,
definitely.
I found that I really like the sound of a dynamic mic. I feel like it's easier to block out the other stuff. It's easier to have rejection between the two voices. One of the challenging things I learned is room mics sound great when you're recording drums and bands, but boy, do they suck when you're recording two voices on a podcast.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about those mics is that you have to eat them, basically. And so there you don't get that whole room sound in here and the air conditioning just rolling through in the back. So that's the good thing about that, and why I even use it on piano, because it's a close mic. So
I would say, let me kind of hop in here with mic stuff. So like you said, Liz, there's condenser and there's dynamic. Condensers are really, really, really sensitive.
Yeah.
And if you go like this, they explode. So
that's a dynamic mic, though, isn't it?
I know it is a dynamic mic, but a dynamic mic, SM7B from Shure, or an RE20, Rode Procaster, something like that. Those are a lot more forgiving. So again, the gear you choose should make it easy for you to be yourself. Let me say that one more time. The gear you choose should make it easy to be yourself. If it sounds good, that's nice. Awesome. The RE20, I don't. Hopefully, maybe they'll give me some free stuff someday. But I like an RE20 because whether you're close to it or far from it, it sounds the same. It's not like really bassy up close and thin. So I got that, not because I thought it sounded good, though it does, but it's just easy. I don't have to think about it. I can focus on talking to Brian.
Yeah, and condensers do sound wonderful, and they sound very high fidelity, but you're going to just need to treat the space around you a lot more carefully, that's all.
Yeah, and we're in a studio, so, I mean, yeah.
We've got 10 minutes left. We're going to get to questions. While we've been talking about gear, I just wanted to thank a couple of these folks, Sound Devices, for letting us use a prop here. PreSonus, we've got someone from PreSonus here. You can chat with them out there. This is all stuff that that we use in our workflow. Roswell microphones. I've just started using the Mini K87. I really like it.
It's a great mic.
It's a really cool mic for a lot of different applications. And they also want to let you guys know that you can win one of those microphones at their booth today. There's a daily drawing at 2:30, booth 9510 in Hall B. So pick up one of those guys.
Do we have an extra microphone for the audience?
There's one right there.
Let me give one more gear shout out too. Rode is making really cool podcasting gear. They have something called a Rodecaster. It's like a little mixing board specifically for podcasting. That thing is super dope. It's like $600.
Yep.
That thing is pretty cool.
I think it's probably safe to say we could go down. We knew we weren't going to get to all of it because there's growing the show, there's monetizing and sponsorships and stuff like that. So I think it's safe to say you guys would be open to questions if people want to email and take a conversation offline.
absolutely.
Or hit
Come
them
ask
out
questions
there,
now.
or ask questions right now, exactly. So if you got questions, now's your time. Hop up. There's a
Can you
mic
come
right
up to
here in
the
the
mic?
middle.
Yeah.
We prefer to get on the mic.
Hi guys, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Edgar from Dominican Republic. I just want to know, what is your experience about debt monetization? It's a big question that everybody asks me when we are talking about this podcast movement. Thank you.
It's a great question, and I remember having that. Is this on?
I don't know.
It's a great question. I remember having that. This one's moron. Sorry.
Moron. Well played.
It's a great question. It's one of the reasons why I joined the community that Larry was in, that we met each other through, and it was a point at which I wanted to figure that out. I sort of discovered, maybe slowly, that it's not as mysterious as we make it out to be. It's sort of the opportunities to monetize your podcast are what you can create. So the best thing to begin thinking about is who your audience is, what their needs are, and how you can help them out. So if you want to teach through your podcast, you can create a course that's online. You can create an in-person event, and you can give an opportunity for people to come to it by buying a ticket and paying you for that value that you provide. You can also reach out to companies that might like to reach your audience because they happen to be exactly the kind of people they're reaching or trying to reach. And if you think that they offer value to your audience, then you can offer them sponsorship opportunities. So just a quick thought is that you may feel like, oh, I got to figure out like what's the way to do it. And in my experience, it's valuable to just figure out what you think is the way that's going to work for you and go from that, and then just really try and over-deliver to everybody you're trying to help out.
And I would say if you're going into podcasting to get rich, you just failed.
Yep.
This, like, you got to be patient, and you got to play the long game. Like, I wouldn't, if you're launching 2020, I wouldn't even think about trying to make money until like 2022.
Unless you're building a podcast for potential customers.
Right.
This is the best way to monetize. If you want to make a bunch of money podcasting, you need a lot of people listening. If you want to make money quickly podcasting, don't make a podcast for your peers, make a podcast for your customers. That works a lot better.
5 minutes.
So as you grow your audience, you are inevitably building a fan base of people that are going to love and trust you. So I'm wondering, is it important for you to engage that audience in addition to your podcast content by either showing resources or coaching or other things as you grow, or will your audience be okay with just your podcast continuing on without any additional content?
I think it's up to you. You know, I know that, you know, you all engage in various ways. I engage in different ways, from the, you know, the consulting to the personal to, I don't know, it's up to you ultimately.
Yeah, if you think it will help your audience and you can manage it and you know how to give it, do it. Just give first. Figure everything else out after.
Yeah.
One last piece on that. I do business coaching for people that listen to our podcast, and the best part about that, one, it's fun, but two, they tell me what they want more of on the podcast. So interacting with your audience, whether that means you're coaching them one-on-one or whether that means you're responding to DMs and Instagram, they'll tell you what they want more of. And there's a feedback loop that's so important to, I think, figuring out what's going to resonate with more people.
Yep. Hi, my name is Gary with Pal Music, youtube.com/Pal Music. And as a YouTuber, I want to post my podcast episodes on YouTube, and I want to do them remote, preferably recorded in Zoom or Skype, and then in the future have a studio that I could invite guests into. Do you have tips for interviewing guests this way to make sure the audio is good on both sides and that guests are comfortable with the format? And is it also a good idea to use the audio only to go on other podcast player sites?
Well, it depends on what the niche is or what the topic is. You know, I'm interviewing audio people, so it was easy for me just to say, hey, can you record your end of it? You know, this kind of mic into a DAW and just send me the file afterwards. But for what's the area?
It'll be musical artists and educators.
Yeah, so I would figure out a way to handle it on your end, because you're going to have a mixed bag of whether or not they're technically proficient at recording themselves and successfully sending it to you.
So, for me at the studio, we use Zoom, and we just record off of what's coming off of Zoom through us. Because we have like plastic surgeons, so we know that they're not going to be able to record on the other end. So we take it in from off of our computer, and then you can see it on the monitor. You can even see their video image. So if you want to, if you're thinking about putting together a studio, you may want to think about having a monitor so you can send the audio to your recorder and be able to see the guests. It'll be like an extra video thing. So
yeah, and then I use Skype with something called Ecamm Call Recorder.
Yeah.
And I use that a lot. And that I find sounds good enough. You know, it sounds great. I'm sure there's ways that I can do it. If somebody records their audio and sends it to me, it can sound better. But one of the lessons I learned was having a guest who was extremely qualified to show up with, make a great recording, show up with the crappiest setup you could ever imagine, a speaker out of a laptop and the built-in mic, And afterwards, I struggled to make sure that I mixed it well, and it's got the highest number of listens on my show anyway. So.
Also, get yourself a copy of Dialogue Denoise, which is a module within RX7 from Isotope. I think they offer it as there's a smaller package, but
You definitely want Isotope.
Isotope RX is brilliant for podcasts.
When I finally got to meet Isotope at one of these at AES, I think it was in New York, I went right up and gave him a hug. I think it was Alexi.
And I use, Liz turned me on to Ecamm movie software. A lot of the folks on my show are traveling, front of house monitors, guitar techs, whatever. So I kind of lean on the fact that my listeners are going to accept that these guys are out on the road. So this is what it is, and 9 times out of 10, I also, in the email, I say, this is what you're going to need if you can do it, right? Headset, microphone thing. It doesn't have to be a full-blown studio, but, you give them a little bit of knowledge up front before they start recording.
And with that, one lesson I learned is to take that extra 5 minutes at the beginning when you start the call to help them walk through, make sure that it sounds the best. What are you using? Maybe it's I'm hearing some echo. Do you have another space? If it starts to get complicated, don't worry about it and just
if it ruins chemistry,
trust yourself.
not worth it.
Next one.
Next question.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Good morning. My name is Jose, death metal band member, San Diego, California. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for being here. I don't have any podcasts as of right now, so I'm learning a lot from this whole experience. But my question comes in part of how do you guys deal with intellectual property as far as your guys' co-hosts or either them or your guests or anything like that?
We don't.
Don't touch it. That was my take.
Right, and that's what I was curious about.
Are you talking about music?
No, not music, but just podcasting in general. I mean, if you have guests and you're bringing them in, do you feel like it's it's a nice community where you're just kind of like, okay, it's fair, this is how do you guys manage that with them?
You mean if they give you their interview, do you feel are you struggling with am I allowed to build a business out of it? Is that sort of the question? Yeah, I think that it's just commonplace. I think it's understood. I think it is the nature of press, and you can try and be very forward about it and get permission with some sort of checkbox or a form or something, or you can just put in a note in there just saying, by agreeing to do this with me, you're agreeing to these things. Like doing business, like running a studio, like agreeing to do something with somebody, the more you communicate up front just clearly about what your intention is, the better it's going to go.
But also, if you were to do an interview for Tape Op or Mix or something like that, it's a given. You're going to do an interview, there's going to be ads in that magazine. So to me, it's like, that's a no-brainer. It's the same thing.
You would think it'd be common sense. I guess that was my concern, is that a lot of people are not seeing it as common practice, especially if you're brand new. That might not be something I would know.
Yeah. If somebody gives me grief over that, I'm not going to interview them.
Yeah.
We're getting the boot, but all you guys that are waiting with questions, please meet us out there down the hall to the right there. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
All right, there you go. There you have it. That is this week's show. Thank you so much for stopping by. Tune in next week for episode 157. During the week, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com, and send me a note because I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And my friends, in the meantime, you all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.